Welcome to the Center for Universal Oneness. We are an open, welcoming, spiritual community that supports all faith traditions and invites you to join us on your spiritual journey. We host different speakers each week to guide and inspire us. We are guided by universal principles of acceptance of all that is sacred, and we strive to live in the oneness of love. Please enjoy this presentation.
All right, so our speaker today, of course, again, is Rev Rita Marie Johnson. Her talk title today, as you can see here, is Tested Wisdom from a Spiritual Adventurer. Can't wait to hear this. Reverend Rita Marie Johnson is a Unity minister. She's created social emotional skills called the Connection Practice. The Connection Practice has been taught worldwide to over 100,000 adults and children. And her book entitled Completely Connected is an Amazon bestseller and has won the Nautilus Award in psychology, in the psychology category. Wonderful. And we'll start our talk off today, or our service off with this fabulous tune, I Believe I Can Fly. All right, thank you. What a great way to lead into our talk this morning. So Reverend Rita Marie, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dan. Mm-hmm. Well, as I said earlier, it's so wonderful to be with you all again. It is truly like family. And we were talking about the fact that Ricardo and I just moved back to Costa Rica here. We arrived Thursday at my property, which is called Kizur. And so we've just been getting settled in. So I left Costa Rica in 2015. And that means, I just realized recently, it's been a 7-year cycle coming back to exactly where I started. So I've been reflecting on the guidance that originally brought me to Costa Rica and the twists and turns of my adventures here. So I'm going to be sharing some highlights of that journey and what I've learned from it. And as we move along, I'm going to be asking you some questions. So I invite you to have a pen and paper handy so you can jot down the answers to these questions, because what I'm hoping to do here is help you see a thread of guidance in your life. So once we do the meditation, then I'll take some time for quick Q&A, and you'll have a chance, if you'd like, to just tell me how it went answering the questions that I throw out to you today. So let's begin by looking at the guidance that brought me to Costa Rica. When I was 10 years old, I was walking down our country road there in Missouri, Belton, Missouri, and there was an incredible sunset. And as I saw all the colors and white light streaming in this sunset, my inner voice said, "You will work for peace." And it was such a loud inner voice, not so still small voice, but more like booming voice. And so I took it in, and it has been my North Star ever since in my life. You will work for peace. Of course, my life has been trying to understand what that means. How am I going to work for peace? And after becoming ordained as a Unity minister, I heard that Costa Rica was the only country in the world with no army and no defense arrangement with another country, and that it stood for peace. And so since I had this North Star to work for peace in my heart, and I heard that news about Costa Rica, there was a deep resonance there. I thought that I could go to Costa Rica and learn from the Costa Ricans and serve this country, help to strengthen this model of peace. So that was the guidance that originally took me to Costa Rica. So in thinking about that, have realized how important that guidance was from my childhood. So I invite you to take a moment and think about whether there was some moment in your childhood where it was really clear the direction that you wanted to go in life, that you were born for. A lot of times we have that guidance when we're kids and then it sort of fades away. So I'm just curious whether you had any guidance in your childhood about how your life would unfold, the path that you were to take. So take a moment to jot that down if you had any sense of guidance from your childhood. Sometimes, even in our older years, when we look back at guidance we got in our childhood, it can reorient us on our path. So once I was in Costa Rica working as a Unity minister, I realized that my deepest passion in regard to my spirituality was about changing education so that it was spiritually based, not religious, but included the whole person. And so I wanted to advocate for this kind of education. I wanted to try it myself, see if I could have an experiment, do education differently than how it was when I grew up. So I founded a small school and got started on that experiment to see if we could do education differently. But I had this sense that there was something I wasn't yet seeing, that something was missing. And so I found myself almost coming to a stop. I would sit in a yellow chair in our little indoor garden in Costa Rica and just sit there because I had this sense I was supposed to be seeing something. And I felt it coming and I would just sit. In my whole life, I think it's the quietest I've ever been in terms of wanting to hear that still small voice, wanting to hear the guidance about this, whatever it was that I was supposed to see, what I was missing. So at that time, I was married to Juan Enrique. Some of you may be aware of him. I was married to him for many years. And at this time, we were living there in Costa Rica in a house, and I woke up one morning feeling like this answer I needed, the answer I was waiting for was literally in the air. I could feel it in the air, but what is it? And so Juan Enrique woke up beside me and realized I was in sort of a odd state of mind, like anticipating something. And I told him, yes, I'm feeling like this answer I'm seeking is right here. And he said, well, that's strange. He said, I just had a dream about that poem Razur that you had translated into English. He said, I dreamed I was in the university area there in Costa Rica, and I ran into the friend who introduced us to this poem Razur, and she said, I'm really done with this poem now, my part, and I'm wondering if you'd be willing to go and make 10 copies of the English translation of this poem Razur. Would you be willing to do that? And he said, well, okay, all right. So he went to a copy shop there in the university area, and he had 10 copies made. And so then, but before he had the copies made, he called me up. This is in the dream. He called me up and said, I'm supposed to make these copies of Razur, but I know that you are the one to make a beautiful face page for the copies. And so this touches me. Sorry. That's what I've been doing. Anyway, sorry. I didn't realize that would move me. So I designed a face page for the copies and faxed it to him at the copy shop. And so he made 10 copies of Razur, this poem. And this is an 85-page epic poem that tells the story of a mysterious teacher named Razur who comes to the mountains of Costa Rica, calls the children from a nearby village into the mountain, and teaches them about the wisdom and compassion in their hearts and their connection with all of creation, with nature, with each other, with all of creation. So when Juan Enrique told me about this dream and about making 10 copies, it dawned on me, this is the answer. The answer I'm seeking is in that poem. I need to reread that poem because I understand that's where the answer is, and my job is to multiply it because the number 10 in numerology is the multiplier. 10 times 10 times 10 times 10. It's the expander. That's the big number is 10 multiplied. So my job is to create the beautiful face page, multiply this kind of education that Razur, this mysterious teacher, was bringing to the children. So that answer was downloaded through Juan Enrique, but my point with this is, although this was a very unusual way to get guidance, very unusual, most unusual way I ever got guidance in my life, that the thing is, I was expecting it. I had slowed down. That's one thing that we need to do when we're seeking guidance. And I was expecting the answer. So when it came, I recognized it. That's it. That's what I need to do. I need to reread that poem, and I need to change the name of my little school to the School of Razur. And we need to base that little school on the principles of that poem. So I was looking for the answer. I got the answer. I claimed the answer. So I'm wondering in your own life, if you've had that kind of experience, perhaps you sensed when some guidance was coming, when there was going to be some turning point in your life, and you found yourself slowing down so you could hear it when it arrived. And the other aspect of getting guidance is, have you had an experience where you expected an answer? The expectation is important, knowing that there will be an answer. So those two things, slowing down and expecting an answer. Have you had experiences in your life like that, where you were paying attention, really focused on listening with them? All right, so then after getting the school going, it'd been going for 2 years, and it was so inspiring to me to see the kids responding to education in this way. I had a marvelous teacher, Paula Castro, in my little school, and I was inspired by what she was doing and all we were learning. So I decided to write a book about this, and I named the book The Return of Razur. And as I was doing research for my first book, I wanted to find out more about the author of Razur, this fabulous man, a mystic really, named Roberto Brenes Massen. He'd been Minister of Education in Costa Rica. He was ambassador to the United States. He was a prolific writer. So I wanted to know more about him to even better understand this inspiring poem. So I went to the woman who wrote his biography. Her name is Maria Eugenia Dengo. So I just called her up out of the blue. I didn't know her. And I was surprised that she said, yes, I will give you an interview. She didn't know me from anybody, but she was willing. So I came to her home, and she invited me into her living room, and I sat down, and she just sat there for a moment in silence. And then she said, well, I want you to know that Roberto visited me in a dream this week. he told me that you would be contacting me, and he urged me to help you. And that is why I've given you an interview today. Well, I was stunned at this. I'm going, oh, wow, what a sign. This was a huge sign to me that I was on the right track. So this is another aspect of living from heart guidance, is watching for the signs and paying attention to whether the sign is confirming the guidance that you've received. When we get those signs that are vivid, like this one was, it's unmistakable. Yes, you are on the right track. So think for a moment. Have you had signs along the way that confirmed that deep knowing that you were on the right track, watching for signs? So the next significant guidance that I received came in the form of my own dreams. Dreams are so important to pay attention to as a form of guidance. So one night I dreamed that I was in a huge classroom, like an auditorium. And I was there to take a test. And the people in the front of the room who were giving the test, they said, now be aware that every person's test in this room is different. And so you have to figure out how to take this test on your own. And so they passed out the tests, and my test was this huge matrix. I could see this big, big matrix of faces. And I recognized some of the faces. They were people that I'd met that I would call raseurs. These were educators who understood the kind of principles I was teaching from at the School of Raseur. These were educators who understood that education happens from the inside out, and that is the most important education. These were educators who understood that we can tap our wisdom and compassion. So I saw the faces of these raseurs on the screen, but they didn't have names on the faces. It was just faces in this huge matrix of faces. And I suddenly realized what my test was. My test was to put names on the faces, to bring them together. For these raseurs, these educators who know how to educate from the inside out, to bring them together so that they could know each other, connect with each other, support each other, and together move forward to create an education that educates the whole person. So that was just clarifying guidance about my mission, that I was to not just work with my little school and with the children directly, but to attract the people who would resonate with this vision and bring them together so they could support each other. And then I want to tell you about one other dream. And as I'm talking about dreams, I hope that you're thinking about any guiding dream that you have had. At one time, I was working at the UN University for Peace, and by a very strange turn of events, they asked me to produce the musical Raseur. That's a whole nother amazing story that don't have time to go into today. But here's the poster. I don't know if you can see it. This is the poster that we did for the musical Raseur. This poster was all over the San Jose area on every bus stop, huge poster on every bus stop in Costa Rica. So, here they're asking this Missouri farm girl to produce the musical Raseur, which was in Spanish. And so very far out kind of thing happened there. And the thing is, I was already working tremendous number of hours at the University for Peace. I was working about 60 hours a week already, and then they gave me this responsibility for producing this musical, which I was delighted to do because I love this story poem, and I wanted to bring it to Costa Ricans because still today, many Costa Ricans don't realize they have this beautiful prophetic poem about their country becoming a model of peace. Anyway, so I was really overwhelmed, stressed, exhausted, trying to do my regular job for the University for Peace and produce this musical. So one night I had a dream, and in the dream, the phone rang. I picked up the phone. Hello. Hello. Who is this? This is God. Okay. All right. So God said, you've been trying to do too much. Just pay attention to Razor and everything will work out. Have you got it? I've got it. Yes, I've got it. That was the dream. And so because of that dream, I resigned from my job at the University for Peace, the only good paying job I ever had in Costa Rica. But I trusted my guidance, and this is such an important thing, to act on the guidance. When we get the guidance, act on it. So I resigned, and that's why I'm here today, friends. And that's why the connection practice is now growing globally, because if I'd worked at the University for Peace and the job they had me in was administration, I would have been limited. And it was hard to give it up, but I followed the guidance and I resigned from the University for Peace. So has there been a time in your life when you had a dream that provided some guidance and you followed it and you found that it led to a higher good? It led you to the next step that was fulfilling in your life. Think about that. All right, so now I'm going to tell you about the most confusing piece of guidance I ever got. Because as my metaphysics teacher in ministerial school said, you know, the thing about guidance is when you get guidance, you don't know if it's really a spiritual message or just the result of a bad bowl of chili. And so, you know, there's no pat answer really when it comes to guidance, getting it and understanding it and following it. So I was divorced at this point in my life, divorced from Juan Enrique. And I was faced with what to do with this property. And I'm going to just give you a quick view here. Here I am. This is Kizur. I don't know how much of it you can see with the camera there. Turn around here. It's hard to see it. Anyway, there's the dream bench out there. I don't know if you can see that. Not so easy. There's a bench there. That's the dream bench looking out to the valley. Anyway, I had to decide what to do with this property now that I was divorced. And while I was in the States, I had a vivid dream. It's what I call a command dream. I've had these dreams where just these words come through like kaboom. So this was one of those command dreams. And what it told me was, if you want to fly, kiss the ground goodbye. So I took that dream literally. I thought, well, it's telling me to let go of this property called Kizur, Kizur is the name of the little town in the poem Razor that became a culture of peace. So if you want to fly, kiss the ground goodbye. So the only way I can imagine kissing it goodbye is if somehow I continued to have this property work for peace. Like to just sell it to anybody after I'd worked so hard to develop this as a peace center. I just couldn't see doing that. I just was attached to the idea that it had to work for peace. So that's, you know, where I focused in on the word kiss. kiss it goodbye, do something sweet with it. So I tried to give this property away 3 times. First to the Rev Foundation, second to the government of Costa Rica, and third to the UN University for Peace. Each time I tried to give it away, it came back to me. Then finally, while I was in the States working as a Unity minister, and then later just as CEO of the Connection Practice, I tried to sell it. No takers. So I have no idea what that guidance meant. I have gone through so many, gyrations here with this property. And so my point here with guidance is you might get some guidance, and maybe I was supposed to go ahead and sell it to anybody at that time. Maybe the thing was I was supposed to kiss it goodbye to just sell it to somebody at that moment when I first got the guidance. And I didn't do that because I was attached to the idea that this property had to work for peace. So, maybe I should have just let it go. But even though I've never really understood what that guidance was about, the point is, even if you make a mistake in hearing your guidance or acting on your guidance, Spirit's going to work it for good. So you don't have to be worried. You don't have to have any anxiety around following guidance, because we understand it's going to be worked for good. So let me just tell you how it worked for good. So I'm at this point in the story in Gilroy, California, single, living out in Gilroy, quite a ways from my congregation in San Jose because of the price of housing in the Bay Area. So I'm all alone out there in Gilroy, no companion, and very lonely. And so I had tried internet dating with, a lot of problems. Let's just put it that way. And I had met this guy named Ricardo who, wanted to have a relationship with me. But, I just didn't think he was the one. Our conversation wasn't really flowing. And so I said, well, let's just be friends. So one night I was sitting there on my couch feeling lonely and, knew I needed to do the connection practice to see what I could do to get past this block of being alone. I'd been 10 years single at this point. And so I did my connection practice, identifying my feelings of loneliness and sadness and my main need being spiritual companionship. And so after naming my main need, then I went into coherence, which I've talked with you all about before, where I went into heart focus, heart breathing, heart feeling of appreciation, and then asking, what do I need to know about my need for spiritual companionship? And the answer came very clearly. You turned him away. It's Ricardo. He's a razor. Clear as day. I went, oh, wow. I have made a huge mistake. I didn't really see who this guy is. And so I had to call up Ricardo and ask for a do-over. So he was willing still to be open to a relationship. And, at that time, I had no idea of returning to Costa Rica, none whatsoever. Never thought I would ever come back to Costa Rica, even though I still had this property and still had not figured out what I was supposed to be doing with it. Anyway, and now it's so clear. Ricardo is like the perfect man for this stage of my journey. This is how Spirit worked it for good. Maybe I didn't get that guidance right. about if you want to fly, kiss the ground goodbye. I don't know. I don't know what that guidance meant. But what I do know is somehow Spirit worked it all for good so that I got the perfect spiritual companion to start this new adventure here in Costa Rica. He's bilingual completely. He's an educator. He has his PhD in multicultural education. He was an elementary school principal for his career. And he loves renovating property. You know, if you could have just written out an order for exactly what would be needed if I was to return to Costa Rica, he would be it. So that's how Spirit worked it for good, even though I stumbled and got lost around this guidance and still don't understand it. And so, friends, have you had that experience? Have you had guidance where you thought you were on the right track, then you got lost, couldn't figure out what in the heck you were supposed to be doing? And yet Spirit worked it for good. Can you think of a time in your life like that? So you see this thread of guidance, all these different moments in life where we have guidance coming through. And my point with the Ricardo moment is that I used the connection practice to get the guidance I needed. Now, I use the connection practice as my form of meditation. But whether you use the connection practice or you meditate, you sit in the silence, whatever you do, that's so important on a daily basis to stay in tune every day with your guidance. And lastly, the test of our guidance is whether it makes us happy. When you are testing your guidance, you know, you need to look inside and say, okay, I have this idea, this is the way I should go. Does it really resonate at that deep level of happiness, of that deep knowing of, yes, this is my happy path? Because that's how Ricardo and I feel right now today here in Costa Rica, that my guidance to return to Costa Rica has landed in this amazing way that I never would have thought possible, frankly. I did not have a desire to come back to Costa Rica, but I am so happy and peaceful with this decision. So that is the test, to try it. When you think of the idea, does it really make me happy? And then when you act on it, am I happy? Keep checking out to see if you are feeling happy. Then you know you're on the right track. So I'd like to summarize the points that I've given you about living from heart guidance. So I believe I've got the screen share here. So I'm just going to share one slide to summarize all of these points about guidance. All right, so first of all, to think about your guidance from your childhood. See if that has some value for you here today. And then when you sense there's an important turning point coming in your life, where there's something coming, some new idea, some new path, slow down. Stop if you have to, so that you can really hear that guidance. And number 3, expect answers. Know that answer is coming. And watch for the signs that you're on the right track. The moment you have a dream, a vivid dream, write it down and seek to understand it. And then no matter how you act on your guidance or understand it, Spirit's going to work it for good. So you don't have to have any anxiety about, oh, is this really guidance or is it not? Just set that aside. You do your best to listen and know that it's going to work for good. And then use the connection practice or meditate to receive guidance every day so you stay on that right path. And then lastly, test your guidance to see if it makes you feel happy at that deep level of knowing. All right, friends, so now I'm going to guide you into meditation. And for this meditation, number 1, I'm asking you to first identify something that makes your heart sing. Some moment in your life or your pet or a moment in nature, whatever it is that really fills your heart, makes your heart sing. Because we're going to do a little heart guidance meditation here. And I also ask, before we move into the meditation, for you to just think for a moment, what is the question on your heart today? Is there any question that you need clarity about, or you're needing guidance? Is there a love issue, a prosperity issue, a health issue? Is there anything on your heart that is a question where you feel that you need guidance? Think about that a moment. So before we meditate, you need to know something that you appreciate, and you need to know what is the question on your heart today where you're needing guidance. Anybody need more time to think about that? All right. All right, friends, then I invite you to bring your hands to your hearts. Did you know that when you put your hand on your heart, that you get a little shot of oxytocin? Oxytocin is the love hormone. It's the bonding hormone. So when you put your hand on your heart, it nurtures you in a way you're not even conscious of. So it's a very important action, putting our hands on our hearts and closing our eyes. And now I invite you to focus down into the heart we go. Just dropping all the energy down. Heart focus. And now breathing as if breathing through the heart. Deep rhythmic breathing. Heart breathing. And now feeling appreciation for whatever is easy for you. Just filling our hearts with whatever makes your heart smile, makes your heart sing. Filling our hearts with that sweet feeling of appreciation. Heart feeling of appreciation. And now I invite you to bring that question on your heart into your heart and just ask, what do I need to know? What do I need to know about this question? And just listen inside. And when you're ready, I invite you to open your eyes. So friends, I hope that this moment of heart guidance brought you some clarity. I know sometimes it doesn't. So if nothing came to you about whatever your question was, that's okay. There's no pressure to get an answer. Boom. It's not like you put a coin in the jukebox and out comes the song you want. So the main thing is that you have set an intention. You have set an intention for an answer. You've gotten clear on the question and you're expecting an answer. So whether something came to you just now, some clarity around whatever your question was, or not, it might show up later in the day. Often it shows up when we're doing something mechanical, something routine, like taking a shower, washing the dishes, driving the car. Oftentimes when our bodies are busy doing something routine, then frees us up to suddenly listen. So I hope that that you found some clarity, or not, like I said, that maybe it'll come later. So I just wanted to take just a moment to see if you have any questions today. I don't usually end a message with Q&A, but because this is a subject that I find people have a lot of questions about, I just thought I'd give you the opportunity if you have a question to ask.
Yeah, I have a question for you. I've known a few people in my life, who I grew up with, who knew what they wanted to do when they were children.
Yes.
I wanted to be a doctor. One guy wanted to be an economist, and they pretty much followed that path directly. But I never had anything like that, and I think my impression is most people don't have a revelation like that when they're a child, like you did. And I just want to add one thing. Your manner of expressing yourself and your your tone of your voice and everything is so close to Sherry. It's just delightful. It's just delightful to watch you and listen to you. It really is. But that's my question, anyhow.
Well, thank you, Greg. Well, yes, I do know that probably the majority of people do not have clarity of going from A to B in their lives. I know that that's unusual. I know that I am unusual in that sense. At the same time, I read a marvelous book called The Soul Code. And in that book, I'm trying to remember the author, but you can look it up on the internet, The Soul Code. In that book, he talks about how if you really are observing children closely, that there's almost always clues to what they are destined to do. And the thing is, they don't know how to hold on to those clues, most of them. I was fortunate that I got some clarity at the age of 10. But most children don't recognize those urges or those visions or the ideas they have of what they want to be. They don't recognize those as clues, but they're there. And, I want to just give you an example from my family, Greg. When I was a kid, there's three of us, my sister Sherry, my brother Tom, and I, okay? In my mother's home, there was a collage of pictures of us when we were kids. The picture of my sister she's holding a big baby doll named Star. She is the one who loved the dolls. She loved being a mom. She wanted to be a mom. And, she got educated, has her master's degree, and, she didn't leave that part of her life out. But her main focus in life has been to achieve the skill of mothering. And she has done that so beautifully, not only with her own kids, but with her grandchildren. So the clue was there. She wants to rock that baby. She wants to be connected to kids. So the picture of my brother is he's on a rocking horse. He loved that rocking horse. So guess what my brother ended up doing? He started a motorcycle business. My brother has a very successful motorcycle business. His whole family is in the motorcycle business. His grandson is winning national races on motorcycles. My brother loved this. And me, what do you think she had a picture of me doing? When I was, I don't know, 6 years old, 7 years old, I was standing up in front of adults with a funny hat on, doing funny monologues. I was speaking at the age of 6. You know, they dressed me up in a funny hat and high heels. And, you know, one of the monologues I did was called Mrs. Chirkup, the life of the party. Can you see that in me now? Can you see there are clues, but here's the problem. Our parents don't realize that these clues are there either. You know, our mom and dad, they didn't know that these were actually clues to who we would become. They are there, but if nobody's paying attention to them, sometimes they get buried so deep that we don't find them in our whole lives. I've seen people challenged in that way, and actually I've helped people. I remember at CSL, Center for Spiritual Living in Dallas, I taught a woman the connection practice, and she stood up and she was my sort of guinea pig, and she said, you know, I feel like I should have a life purpose, but I never have known what it is. And, you know, we processed her, and 25 minutes later, she was clear on her life purpose. But it gets buried. So unless we know how to dig it out or, you know, go back and pay attention to what did we love to do when we were kids? It's that happy feeling and staying in tune with that often helps us to find our way. But I do know that the pain and despair people feel when they get disconnected from their soul code, when they can't find what it is theirs to do. It can be challenging, but it's still possible at any age, by the way. Yeah, Doug, you're muted. You're muted, Doug.
Sorry. Could you give us the reference of the poet? Is it Lesueur? So we can look that up?
It's Razur. That's R-A-S-U-R, Razur. I don't know if you'll find it on the internet. You might. You know, it's a Costa Rican poem, and it was published as a little book. I don't have one here in Costa Rica. By Roberto Brenes, B-R-E-N-E-S, Mesen, M-E-S-E-N. But I tell you what, Doug, you can go to our website. The best way is to go to our website, which is connectionpractice.org, connectionpractice.org. And if you look under the menu there, under About Us, you will find that poem translated. You know,
thank you.
Yeah, it's in Spanish, but it's fully translated there on our website.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
And I would ask, could you all hold your questions until after the service here, when we can move into our coffee talk hour, since we're kind of pressed for time right now? If you could just hold those questions, and you know, we will go ahead and close out our service today, and then we can continue with this conversation, you know, with Reverend Rita. So at that time, we can move on.